Hi, everyone. I'm Don. I am INE's Director of Community, and welcome to the third day of Cybersecurity Week. As you may have heard, here at INE, it is our mission to be the world's leading provider of hands-on, role-based technical training, and we are maniacally focused on developing experts in the areas of cybersecurity, networking, cloud, data science, and other areas as well. We often like to say that we're actually experts in making you an expert. Well, we hope you've been enjoying everything that we've been showing you the last couple of days, and we're going to continue throughout the rest of this week. In fact, here's a quick look at the activities that we've already done and what we have planned for the rest of the week. Now, it's our intention to give you a nice mix this week of general information about the industry, as well as diving into some of the specifics of certain job roles and techniques, kind of like what we're going to do today. I'm going to show you some IoT hacking techniques. All, though, with the overarching theme of answering probably the most common question that we all get, and I know I get it often: how do I actually do this for a living? Well, on Monday, Chris Leach and I took a slightly different approach to the news of the day. So instead of what you might think was the obvious thing to cover, we looked at how latest news like stonks and SolarWinds, tax season are all concerns for cybersecurity professionals, and then how to prepare to defend yourselves and your organizations by getting some training, where to go, things to think about, things to be aware of. Yesterday, we released a video by Neil Bridges on a day in the life of a security team as he goes over what you can expect day to day, including things like team structure and typical job roles. Now, we also had a really cool blog post that was released yesterday by our very own Lily Clark on her journey to earning her EJPT certification. We also topped that off with an Ask Me Anything question, and she did incredibly well. So thanks for inspiring us with your article, as well as answering a bunch of our questions. So that was pretty cool. You can probably go look on the unofficial INE eLearn Security Discord server. If you need information on that, just let us know. We'll be able to share that with you. I think they are going to load up the recording of that Ask Me Anything session, which not only covered where Lily came from totally being non-technical to earning her very first penetration testing certification, which again is a hands-on practical test, as well as other career advice. Well, of course, there's today, where I'm back with an intro to IoT hacking. More on our agenda today in just a little bit, but don't forget that by attending this webinar today, you have automatically been entered into a little bit of a raffle for prizes that we'll be giving away at the end of the week. But remember, you have to attend, not just register. But you actually get 3 chances, because we had the live event on Monday, again we have today, and then we have another live event on Friday. And if you register as well as attend those events, you will automatically increase your chances of winning. Now, tomorrow brings some more great content with the release of another video. And this one is a BizTech Blueprint, Building Skills for a Multi-Cloud Enterprise, with our resident expert on cloud and Azure, Tracy Wallace, as well as Catherine Brown, who's also with INE. She's our PR director. We'll also be releasing a blog post from Hiso Meru on Pen Testing 101, Getting In with Social Engineering. So that should be cool. Look out for that. And then finally, on Friday, we close things out with what will hopefully be a great way to wrap this whole thing up with some career advice on how to get into this field, with also some specifics on how to get into pen testing. I think you'll really enjoy it. We also will have an extended Q&A session on any career topic that you want. So it could be general IT, security, pen testing, or anything within that realm. Also keep an eye out, because we'll probably have a special guest joining us. So we're going to keep that quiet for a little bit right now. But just to keep an eye out for that. But hopefully with all of that, we're going to end the week on a high note. We'll announce the winners of the prizes as well at the end of the live Q&A session on Friday for starting a career as an ethical hacker. Now, on behalf of the whole INE team, who has worked incredibly hard to bring you this great week of content, I just want to thank you again for joining us. So let's go ahead and continue the fun. Now, I have a ton to cover today, so if I happen to oversimplify things for time's sake, please don't flame me. I won't get everything exactly right. It probably takes a longer conversation to go into those little nuances. But if I happen to go fast and breeze by a few slides, well, don't worry, because you may see a lot of content on those slides. I'm not going to bore you by reading every single thing that's on those slides. If you want to go back and look at it later, we will make that available for you. Now with that, I want to welcome you to IoT Hacking 101, not so smart home devices. So let's jump right into our agenda today. First of all, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Then I'll define some terms. So I'll define things like, what is IoT? What is hacking? Where did that come from? Also, what's the difference between hacking and ethical hacking? And then I'm going to get very specific in exactly what IoT hacking is and break it up into different categories. Next up will be an overview of universal plug and play, or UPnP, as well as a little discussion and showing you what our target device is that we're going to attack today. Now, I'll take you on a step-by-step how-to on exactly what we're going to be doing today. But more importantly, we're going to cover why this matters. Then I'll share all the resources that I used today with you. We'll have links, a whole bunch of other stuff. And then, of course, we're going to close with a Q&A. All right, so who am I and why should you even bother listening to me? Well, first of all right, fine, I'll admit it. I'm kind of getting up there in age, but I think I came along at a really great time because I remember having hands-on access to things like the Osborne portable, I say in quotations, computer. And by portable, I mean it was an actual suitcase with 2 big floppy drives, no hard drive whatsoever, a big 5-inch green text screen. Oh, of course, you could always have the option of an amber screen instead of a green screen, but all it was text. And the keyboard clipped into the bottom of it. Then you carried it around like this big 50-pound suitcase. It was pretty crazy. But I got experience with that kind of technology. At that time, phone phreaking was also pretty big. So I also created a number of different colored boxes. I was in the area where we hung out on bulletin board systems. I also did war dialing for one of my very first hacks, kind of like what they did in war games. Now, with that, I got that background, but then I also clearly was around to see the explosion of the internet and so much more. Then I got into my professional life and I have experience being a systems admin. I was a partner and a CTO at a software company. I also was a director of IT for the Department of Medicine at the largest medical school in the country. Now, all of this, plus I'll admit I have entrepreneurial blood running through my veins. Thanks, Mom and Dad. But that led to the founding of the Ethical Hacker Network, a free online magazine and community for security professionals. Now, EHNet, as we call it, was acquired in eLearn Security several years ago, which in turn, eLearn Security was acquired by INE, which is how I got to be here. Now, I served as the editor-in-chief of EHNet, as well as headed up community efforts for eLearn Security. Now, in my current role as director of community for INE, I will continue on as an evangelist for cybersecurity career advancement, while also engaging with the wider IT community in not just cybersecurity, but also those other things that we do very well at INE, which is networking, cloud, data science, a number of different things. And we'll be doing that in a number of ways, which I'll show you later, which are not only events like this with webinars and Cybersecurity Week, but we're very active in socials and Discord communities. And of course, we participate and sponsor a number of different events. And we'll share with you a little later where we're going to be and where you can join up with us. All right, well, that's plenty enough about me. Let's jump right into those definitions so we can properly set the stage. All right, so what is IoT? Now, I don't want to waste too much time on this because it can get a little confusing, but suffice it to say that IoT has actually had numerous definitions depending on whom you ask, also when you ask them. Kevin Ashton coined the term in 1999, but at that time, it only meant dealing with RFID, supply chains, things like that. It then expanded well beyond that to include what most people think of as non-standard network devices. So not typical devices like switches, routers, servers, desktops, laptops, that kind of thing, but it includes things that most people until then didn't even think of giving internet access to. And those things had sensors, or they were connected to Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, home appliances, and other smart devices. And even though the word internet is in the phrase itself, IoT can now also include devices that communicate only on your local network. So why not just say it's all the things? Or maybe another way of looking at it is you'll know it when you see it, or then again, maybe you won't. It gets a little confusing, people's definition of IoT, because today's definition is vastly different than it was in 1999. And I'm pretty confident that tomorrow's definition is sure to change as how we see it today. All right, how do we define hacking? Well, hacking can also take on many meanings as well. From way back in 1680, a hack was a negative term around doing subpar work in the hopes of financial gain. It can also mean to cut in pieces. Okay, well, that's an interesting one. I'm sure you get that. Like hack this thing up into different pieces, a tree or whatever it may be. Now, it can also mean how to manage or cope with a situation, or more commonly, how not to. So you'll often hear the phrase, you can't hack it. That's kind of where that comes from. But in the 1960s at MIT, it started morphing into something a little more familiar to us today. Hacks were practical jokes with a technical cleverness. It's also because of this that hacking became intimately connected to technology. So anyone who could take apart computers, make them do things for which they were not originally intended, or just kind of be really good at using them, they became known as a hacker. Now, there definitely was some mischief back in those MIT days, but when that mischief crossed the legal line and the media reported on it, well, unfortunately, those hackers became synonymous with criminal activities with a technical component and not just being mischievous. Now, being the eternal optimist that I am, I often like to err on the positive connotation of the word hacking. However, I do have to agree that many bad things are done with hacking skills. But like with many endeavors in life, it's not the items or the tools themselves that are bad. It's kind of what you do with them. So in my opinion, hacking can actually be a good or a bad thing. I like to use those skills for good. Other people do not. Now, because of that, and because of the media constantly grabbing onto that idea that these mischievous things, which a lot of people, they'll report on them being, illegal because they're sensational, well, they kind of mix those two all into one category. So unfortunately, we had to come up with this weird idea to differentiate between good and bad hacking. So for better or worse, we are forced to use a term like ethical hacking. Now, I won't get into the full details of everything dealing with ethical hacking, where, hey, some people may even think that that's an oxymoron. I don't. I happen to think that it's a further clarification of the definition, but that's just me. But with that, I'll leave the slide in here if you want to reference it later. So in short, if I were to define ethical hacking is using the same tools and techniques as the bad guys to perform security-related activities with permission. So for our purposes today, our ethical hacking activities will take on the role of a pen tester. So that's what we're going to play today. We're going to see what IoT devices are on our network, can we hack them, and then obviously, why should we care? All right, so if you want to, again, we can discuss this in the Q&A later if you want to. I won't go through everything here, but because we can have that general definition of ethical hacking, well, we can then break ethical hacking if you're using the same tools and techniques as the bad guys, but to do things with permission and also to perform legitimate research. We could break ethical hacking up into these different categories. So things like pen testing in those various forms, red teaming, forensics, incident response, and also things in the dev environment. So I know a lot of people out there will use the term ethical hacking to be associated with just penetration testing, but that's not quite how it's evolved as we've grown as an industry. All right, so we defined IoT, we defined hacking, we defined ethical hacking. So what exactly is IoT hacking? All right, again, for time's sake, I'm going to simplify this. So I'll simplify it by breaking the landscape down of IoT hacking into three main areas. All right, so if we look from left to right, hardware hacking is more thought of as hooking up your probes to a circuit board and dumping the firmware, or you could physically modify that device in whatever way you want. Of course, if you're doing that, you need to make sure that you have your soldering iron and your multimeter handy, but that's kind of cool. Now, software hacking is either messing with the firmware you or someone else dumped from that physical device using your probes, or better yet, here's an idea for you. Go get that firmware directly from the manufacturer's website. They often have it for you to download for free. The other way that you can think of software hacking as trying to use your web app pen testing skills to exploit the software that is on that device itself. All right, now moving on to process hacking, that's more of figuring out where the weaknesses are in the architecture used to control those devices, or taking advantage of how that data is passed between the edge device and the local network, or even cloud services. Now, we won't be getting into hardware hacking today. There's plenty of great resources out there, like there's an article series on the Ethical Hacker Network called Hardware Hacking 101. So that's really cool. Go check it out. There's numerous YouTube channels, resources, courses, videos, articles, blog posts. So go check that out. But with only an hour webinar today, it's kind of way too complex of a topic. Plus, I want to kind of lower that barrier. So even attempting to show you even the last two areas, software and process, you'll only get just enough to, well, at least hopefully pique your interest. Now, a little credit where credit is due. I want to give shout outs to the IoT Village as well as the Village Idiot Labs. Now, since you can't go to an IoT Village at any physical event, my intention today is to bring you an IoT Village right here virtually. So INE is a seasoned sponsor of the IoT Village, so we support every village for 2021 and beyond. Now, if you're not familiar with villages, if you're new to this whole environment, basically a village is a con within a con. So if you think about it in terms of DEF CON is so big, well, you have your main tracks where you can go see talks and participate in CTFs and all kinds of other activities. But out of that grew smaller groups who decided to create their own villages within DEF CON. Well, that idea expanded beyond just DEF CON. And so now many other cybersecurity events or hacker cons also have these villages. So you have things like Wi-Fi villages, social engineering villages, lockpicking villages. There's a whole bunch of other ones. Well, this one is specifically on IoT hacking. Now, the IoT villages brings you hands-on activities around, obviously, IoT hacking with numerous labs, talks, as well as contests. Now, the team at the Village Idiot Labs created a few of those hands-on labs that you'll get at an IoT Village. Now, I'm thrilled to be able to bring one of those to you today with universal plug and play and a smart plug. Now, I added my own little flair to it, did a few little things here and there, kind of what we do in the hacking community. We stand on the shoulders of giants. But just want to give a special shout out to the Vil guys for helping me out today. And this will give you a really good idea of what you might be able to experience, not only at the various IoT villages when we go back to physical events, but even in their virtual formats. Now, there's plenty of research and content on the perils of universal plug and play. So this is nothing new, but hopefully we'll cover it in a way that drastically lowers the barrier to entry. So for the uninitiated, let me start by covering a quick little overview of what universal plug and play is. All right. So according to openconnectivity.org, those are the maintainers of the universal plug and play spec. Well, they describe it as, quote unquote, the UPnP architecture is a distributed open network architecture that leverages TCP/IP and the web to enable seamless proximity networking in addition to control and data transfer among network devices in the home, office, and everywhere in between. Well, damn, that sounds awesome, right? Well, using standard protocols such as HTTP, XML, and SOAP, well, devices can advertise their functionality to each other and interact with other devices of varying types without any user input. All right, let me say that again. Without any user input. Just think about that for a second. They call that zero configuration networking. Well, what could possibly go wrong with that? Well, universal plug and play can be understood a little bit more by looking at its 6 capabilities. Now, I'm not going to define them all right now. I'm not even going to read them word by word. That's kind of boring. I'm going to lose you. But those capabilities include addressing, discovery, description. Then we also have control, event notification, and presentation. Now, if you read through all of those details, there's some fantastic features. I'll be honest with you, but there's something crucial, especially from a cybersecurity standpoint, that's missing. Well, what if I told you that everything that they just talked about in the universal plug and play spec, it was all unauthenticated? So I'm sure you can figure there's the rub. In order to make it completely seamless without any user input, we're actually told that no authentication is a feature. You gotta love that. That's something that people often say, no, it's not a security hole, it's a feature. Well, once again, we have that age-old battle between convenience and security. Now, after all, these devices are inside your network, right? And no one ever thought of breaking into someone else's network. Yeah, right. Well, we know this simply isn't the case. And for most, it's trivial to get into somebody else's network, especially with many Wi-Fi routers and smart home devices having universal plug and play turned on by default. So it really doesn't take that much additional pen testing skills to get in. And once you're there, what do you think a few of the things that you can do are? Well, pretty much anything we want. You can open ports to the internet, turn the devices on and off, and have full access and control over those devices. Now, I'm not trusting the demo gods at the moment. I will in a little while. We're going to tempt the fates. But instead of doing this live right now, let me at least show you step by step with real screenshots what we're about to go do, so that way you can get a good grasp of what we plan on doing, the technical details behind it, because when I do the demo, it's going to be really fast using automated tools. So that way I can show you how easy it really is. But I do want to show you a little bit of the technical background, so at least you get the overview or the big picture concept of what we're trying to do. Then a little later, I will tempt that fate and give it a quick go with a live short demo, but let's set the stage. All right. Keep in mind that this is a recreation of an IoT Village lab that you can try on your own or even at one of their events, even the virtual events that they attend. And I think they're probably going to do upwards of about 15 to 20 different events this year alone, starting in March, and we'll be with them every step of the way. Now, the labs may vary depending on the event that you go to, so your mileage may vary. But in this particular lab I'm going to show you today, we're going to search the network for all universal plug and play devices. And then we're going to find our target device for this lab. And in our case, it's going to be the Belkin Wemo Mini Smart Plug. Now, that should be plugged into an outlet and turned into a lamp, which I've actually done here in my home office, and we'll see in a little while. Now, the only way that you're supposed to be able to turn on that lamp should be with the Wemo app, or which you can see on your screen on the right-hand side, or by physically touching the button on the device. So the picture you see on the left-hand side, that little button on the right of the plug, that's a physical button that you can push. Those are supposed to be the only two ways that you can turn on that device. But as you can figure, we're going to show you another way. All right, first, let's show you the manual way, which obviously is very effective, but it takes staring at the console over and over again. So for some people that's intimidating, but just bear with me. This is to show you what's actually going on behind the scenes before we get to those automated tools that just kind of does it automatically for you. All right, later we're going to make it easy by looking at those actual GUI tools, but let's just start with the console. Now, keep in mind, it's not hard to find the Python code to create your own universal plug and play device scanner. And that's what we did. So we'll use one called msearch.py, and that's based on the work found on the Electric Monk blog with a few mods that I made on my own. Now, this basic script will, in essence, broadcast a discovery message, and then it's going to print the responses that it gets to the screen. Pardon me, I have a little tickle in my throat. Let me grab a quick drink. Oh, hopefully that goes away soon. Deep breath, forgive me. So when we run that script, oh, you gotta hate this. Thank you for being patient with me. All right, a few more drinks, we'll give it a go. All right, so when we run that script, you can see the response from just the universal plug-and-play devices, which are on our local network. And of course, they happily give up their IP addresses, but it also gives up plenty of other data, including a handy URL pointing us to a file, setup.xml. What could we possibly do with a URL? Well, open up your browser of choice, throw in the URL, let's see where we get. Well, we seem to get the contents of that expected setup.xml file. Oh, and look, once we do that, it kindly pops up additional information, such as more XML files with all the defined services that that device provides. All right, cool. Now, this is part of doing hacking. You kind of just play around and see what you find. And then once you find some information, well, what can you do with that information? Now, of particular interest is the event service XML file. So how convenient would it be if that file is actually located in exactly the same place as the current XML file we're looking at now? Well, we're hackers and we can be lazy sometimes. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant we're efficient. So let's just give it a shot, see what happens. So let's just simply replace the file name of setup.xml with eventservice.xml. Let's see what it brings us. Well, sure enough, there it is. Now, truth be told, it really is meant to be that way. We didn't do some, really cool hacker trick or anything like that, because that's what the universal plug-and-play spec actually dictates where that file should be. But maybe we didn't read the UPnP spec. So how would we know that? Well, a little trial and error never hurt anybody. Either way, the event service file lists all of the event-specific actions that are supported by this device, and it gives all the information necessary to create requests in order to interact with and also control that device. All right, well, cool. Now, I know it's small on your screen, but the arrow is pointing to the binary state parameter. All right, let's just think about that for a second. Binary state. All right, so that's binary, so either 0 or a 1, or better yet, think of that as being off or on. I know that's pretty simplistic for a lot of you seasoned hackers out there, but I'm pretty sure that we're going to have a number of people joining us that have never looked at any of this stuff before, or at least thought in a way of using a hacker mentality. So just think about it that way. So if you think about it as the binary state being off or on, well, we have a light plugged into an outlet, and we're trying to control that outlet. Well, that seems very interesting to me. So let's just make a mental note of that one. I'm pretty confident it'll come back later. All right, so as we explained before, these actions do not require authentication. And controlling a device is often as simple as sending it a request with those specific parameters. So what program can intercept web traffic, allows us to modify the content, and then send it along like a man-in-the-middle attack? Well, you probably guessed it already. It's a web proxy. And of course, what is everybody's favorite web app tool or web app proxy? Well, it's Burp Suite. So we're going to use that, and Burp Suite will do the trick. So Burp Suite is obviously the de facto standard for web app pen testing, but it doesn't know how to parse the universal plug-and-play formats natively. So it's going to need a little help. Well, of course, if you personally know the right HTML, XML, and SOAP, well, you're good to go. You don't need a plugin, just go for it. But what if you don't? Well, like anything else in the hacker community, there's probably a tool for that. Well, there just so happens to be this great extension for Burp that was created by Maurizio Cito, and modified by Loudmouth Security. And it's called UPnP Bee Hunter. And that can do everything in a very GUI automated way that we just did using that msearch.py script. Now, it can also, above and beyond what msearch did, it can also interact directly with Burp's features. So that's really cool. Now we can use the power of automation as well as the power of what Burp can do. So let's open up Burp Suite. We install Bee Hunter and then watch exactly how easy this really is. All right. So once you open up Burp Suite, you're going to notice that there's a bunch of tabs all the way at the top. Well, because we installed the UPnP Bee Hunter add-in, excuse me, it becomes a brand new tab that you have very easy access to. So when you click on that UPnP Bee Hunter tab, the window that you see on your screen, again, the text is really small, so I'm going to make it very simple for you, but this dialog box appears, and you can see circled in red, it says step number 1, step number 2, and step number 3. It actually becomes that easy. All right, so we selected universal plug and play. We're going to do that service and action, and then it's time to attack. And that's really all there is. Now, of course, it helps to know more of the underlying reasons as to why this works, which is why we showed you how to do it manually before, because it'll just make your efforts that much more effective. But 3 steps, and you have total control. So let's take a closer look at step number 1. First of all, you click the Start Discovery button that you see in the middle, and that will launch everything that msearch did on the command line, but it will also automatically parse that XML so you don't have to look at that gobbledygook. So it's actually very easy to navigate. All right, once we know how to navigate that, it pops it up as options. So then in step number 2, you select the device that you want to attack from the IP list. So you choose the type of service then that you want to utilize against that device, and then the actions you want to form that are part of that event service.xml. Well, when I originally did this screenshot, my Wemo device was given the above IP address, so that's what we're going to use, 1.95. Then moving over to universal plug and play list, it's going to list all those different XML files that we showed you earlier. Well, we just want to pick the right one so that way we can effectively attack this device. Well, in this case, we know that it's event service.xml. Well, once we do that next step of choosing event service XML, again, it automatically parses that XML file and turns those options into a drop-down list of actions. All right. So in this case, we wanted to mentally note something earlier. So it was the binary state. So that's what we're going to choose. There is an option here within this XML file to just get the binary state, but we don't want to just get the information. We want to interact with this device, so we're going to set the binary state. All right. Now, once an action is selected, an example request automatically appears in the text area underneath step number 3. So again, instead of msearch or you having to go and create all of this text on your own, just by simply choosing those 3 areas or what you want to do in step number 2, it automatically populates all of that text for you. From there, you can simply send it directly over to the Burp repeater by pressing the repeater button at the bottom of the screen. Now, for those of you familiar with Burp, you can also send it to Burp's intruder for fuzzing, but that's a little beyond the scope of today, but I highly encourage you to go test it out. But by sending it to Burp's repeater, we can then edit the message in any way we want before it actually gets sent to the smart plug. So now let's move over to that repeater tab, and the universal plug and play request that we just created from step number 3 is now already waiting for you. And it's not just waiting for you, it's an editable window. Now, all of the parameter values have been filled with the text fuzz here to show you what you can play with or what user input can be inserted instead of fuzz here. If you don't change it and you keep it as fuzz here, no problem. It just ignores it. But let me show you what we can do. So again, let's focus in on that set binary state section. We're going to remove the text fuzz here from the binary state parameter and replace it with the number 1. Obviously, as we mentioned earlier, binary state 0 and 1, 0 is off. So by selecting 1, what do you think is going to happen? So we click the send button. We have Burp Suite send your newly custom crafted message over to the Wemo smart plug based on that IP address that we chose and what it found. And voila, the lamp turns on. Now, if we set the binary state back to 0, hit the send button again, well, this new message now turns the lamp off. Okay, kind of seems a little anticlimactic because, believe it or not, that's really all there is to it to control this device. So congratulations, you just hacked your own network. Well, ethically, of course, I'm assuming you gave yourself permission to do this in your own network and environment. But that really was it. Now, just to show you how easy that was, and let me do a little double check on time. Yeah, we're doing fine. Why don't we try and go do this live? All right, so let me start my screen share. I'm going to share Burp Suite. All right, now I already did this, but if you want, we can take a second now to just hit Start Discovery. And you can see that that's running. And eventually what's going to happen is it's going to find that particular device. You can see our status, it's moving on. There we go. So it found a few devices. Now, unfortunately, in my own network, I'll turn this off when we're done with this demo, but I had to turn on universal plug and play for at least some of this stuff to work. Well, in the demo it was 95. I just happen to know that today it's 1.96. So when I do that, again, it grabbed that XML file that it did when it went out to go search the network, and it populated this UPnP list with all the XML files that it found, okay? Well, as we said earlier, we want to look for event service.xml. So when we click on that, it goes to that particular XML file, it parses it out, and it takes all the options, puts it in a nice drop-down menu, makes it very easy to choose. All right, so we don't want the get binary state, we want set binary state. So let me see where it is. There it is. All right, now again, notice every time I chose something in this second step, it started changing what we see here in the third step. And once we now have exactly what we want, and it already pre-crafted all of that text for us, we're going to send that to Burp's repeater. Okay. Once I hit send to repeater, you'll notice that the repeater tab actually highlights. So when we move over there, now we can see that that text that it actually created automatically for us based on what we decided that we wanted automatically pops up here. We're going to go to that first binary state. We're going to remove fuzz here. And then what I also want to do is I'm going to share my video. Hey, everybody, how you doing? Now, as you can see behind us, I have a little lamp. It's a lab magnifying glass that I use for some of my IoT stuff that I play with here, and it has a light on it. So it's connected. Not sure if you can see it at the bottom there. It's very small. Forgive the size of the video, but trust me, it is plugged into a Wemo smart outlet. And then, of course, that smart outlet is connected through universal plug and play on my network. So you can see that it's off. So basically that current state is 0. And what we want to do then is change this to 1. So now I can sit here and I can modify every single thing that I want. I can get it exactly the way that I want it, double check everything before I actually send it off to that device. That's the beauty of what Burp Suite does. So now once I'm pretty confident of what I want to do, then I can say, all right, now actually go send this to the real device. So when I click send, boom, there you go. Yeah, whew, it worked. And then of course, it still is sitting here. And if I want to turn it off, I just simply go back to 0. I hit send again, and off it goes. You can see how easy that was. That's an easy hack. Now, there's some studying and research and testing out that goes along with that. But in the end, it really is that easy. All right. So bye, everybody. Nice seeing you. I'll be right back. I'm going to stop sharing this, and I'm going to go back to sharing my slides. There we go. Hopefully you guys can see that. Excellent. All right. So as you can clearly see, what we've done up till now really wasn't that difficult. I mean, we didn't break into anything other than maybe getting into the network in the first place. Of course, I gave myself permission, but if you're doing this against somebody else, you'll have to break into that network. But that's okay. That's part of the job. So, what about that question we posed earlier about whether universal plug and play is really a risk or if it's just a cool feature? Because all we really did was use the protocol spec as intended. We just did it in a way that they didn't anticipate. So we went beyond just using either the physical button on the device or using the app that's supposed to connect and it has an account, all this stuff. So maybe they think that that's the authentication, but once you get onto the network itself, it really doesn't do any authentication whatsoever. But if you think about it, that is still hacking, albeit more in the category of process hacking. But I did mention that we'd go into that other form of hacking, which is software hacking, because that's not all that we can do with these devices. Now, many of the services within Universal Plug and Play, they don't sanitize inputs properly either. And that leads to, for you experienced hackers out there, you guessed it, command injection and buffer overflows. Now, that's obviously more of the software hacking that I mentioned earlier, and that definitely falls into a risky category and a high risk at that. Now, we don't cover it in this particular lab, but other IoT Village labs will explore this as well as many other types of IoT hacking. So again, go check them out, whether it's in a physical way or in the virtual events that we have coming up over the next several months. All right. Now, of course, that begs the question, well, why should you care? Well, here's a few ideas for you to ponder. Has security by obscurity ever really worked? I mean, look how easily we could turn the light on and off. Well, what else could we do, or worse, prevent you from doing with your own device? How about turning off your fridge with food and maybe even medicine in it? How about locking you out of your own house? Or how about gaining access to your router and spying on all of your traffic, or even having access to all of your files? Or not just your files, the files from your organization while we all work from home. So consider the following. Well, for a while now, it has been considered a best practice for enterprises to turn off universal plug and play. But now with coronavirus and the drastic increase of the work from home population, well, the CIS, or the Center for Internet Security, released a blog post right at the beginning of the shutdown around March 12th of last year. And their top security remedies for telework were published. So this is everybody who's working from home. This is what their security recommendations are. Among all of the normal suggestions, lo and behold, turning off universal plug and play made this list. Well, what does that tell you? So if they know to put this on the list for non-cybersecurity professionals, people who really don't know that much about security, they're just regular end users, and it's for their personal and home offices, it clearly says that it's bad. Now, believe it or not, it actually gets worse. How do you even know if your devices even utilize universal plug and play so you can take this great advice that CIS is giving you and turn it off? How do you do that if the manufacturers themselves don't even tell you that your device has it and is using it? Case in point, our very own Target today. Not only does Belkin fail to mention universal plug and play anywhere on the box, and not even in any documentation included in the packaging, get this, there's not even a listing for it anywhere on the product page, not even in support documents. So not only is that a complete failure by the manufacturer properly informing its customer base, but I know I said this before, it just keeps getting worse. There's actually no way to even turn off universal plug and play device, even if you figured it out due to their lack of letting you know. They look at it as an integral part of the functioning of this smart plug. So if you want to turn off universal plug and play, A, you can't, but B, if you want to not utilize it because of the security implications of it, well, guess what your only option is in this case? Stop using the device entirely. So then it falls to us to learn how to check this ourselves. So instead of just playing the part of pen testers as a fun little exercise for this talk in the IoT Village Lab, well, here's a recommendation for you. Go take exactly what we did today and actually do this for real on your own home network. You may also want to check out the networks of your coworkers, your family, your friends, whenever or wherever it's safe to do so. Or you just kind of share this talk with them, share the video later. Just a thought. Anyway, I'm getting a little heated. I'm breathing a little heavy. Plus, my throat is really not doing so well today. But let's take a deep breath. Let me try and calm down a little bit. And once I try and calm my heartbeat a little bit, here's some resources that you can use to not only recreate what we did today, but also to test things out for yourself. Now, everything listed here has either been mentioned earlier today or will be helpful as you work through this lab on your own. So here's the link to the Universal Plug and Play standards for your reference, as well as the link to the target device if this is the one you want to try, or maybe try some other. For the Universal Plug and Play scanner, check out Ferry's Electric Monk blog and another cool article on Hackaday. Now, I completed every step of this lab using the free community edition of Burp Suite. And that comes on both Linux as well as Windows. I happen to use Windows just because that's how I'm doing the presentation and with Zoom. But they do have versions for Linux, and this works exactly the same thing or exactly the same way on your Linux boxes. So anyone should be able to play at home. Now, just keep in mind that if you do this on Windows, you have to use something called JSON. But it's not difficult to set up. In fact, when you go to the Extender tab in Burp to install the UPnP bhunter extension, a message appears at the bottom explaining exactly what you need to do. So you just do a search for JSON, you find the full downloadable file, and then Burp will tell you where to put that. Now, if you're new to all of this and you would like some more information on becoming a pen tester, well, we kind of have a little gift for you today. But again, let me give a quick shout out to not only the IoT Village, but also the help from the Village Idiot Labs. And of course, I'm with INE and eLearn Security. So if you need those links, those will be provided for you if you haven't figured out how to find us yet. I kind of figured you did because you're already attending and you had to register, but there you go. But we do have something to offer you today, which is the INE Starter Pass, and it is 100% free, and it gives you access to numerous snippets of all of the courses on the INE platform, including cybersecurity, networking, cloud, data science, and much more. But to go one step better, it also includes a full introductory security learning path that we call the Penetration Testing Student Learning Path, or PTS for short. Now, PTS comes with all of the slides, videos, in order to teach you the basics, not only the prerequisites of pen testing and programming, networking, and that kind of stuff, but it also teaches you the full methodology of how to perform a real pen test. Now, granted, this is our junior pen testing course offering, and it prepares you for eLearn Security's EJPT certification exam. Now, keep in mind that is not included. There is a slight cost for that, but it's only $200 for that exam. But again, all of the training is absolutely free with the INE Starter Pass, but it goes one step further. In order to truly learn how to do this stuff, you have to get your hands dirty. You have to do the practical work. Well, with the PTS, as well as all of our other cybersecurity courses on the INE platform, they all come with virtual labs. And it's unlimited time in those virtual labs as well. And also with the INE Starter Pass that comes with the PTS, you get 3 full black box penetration test practice environments. So by the time you're done with the course and the exam, you've probably done, at the very least, if not more, 4 full pen tests on your own. So not bad for free. So head over to INE.com, give it a try. You've got nothing to lose. And as I mentioned in the previous webinar, honestly, a life-changing career move to gain, because this industry is looking for a lot of people. They can't fill those jobs because they don't have the people who have the skills to fill them. And if you do have those skills, they're really good paying jobs. Anyway, I want to thank you for joining us today. Before we get to the Q&A, I want to give you a little bit of information on the prizes that I mentioned, as well as how to contact us. So as we mentioned earlier in the virtual waiting room, figured it would be worth mentioning this live as well. I am at Ethical Hacker on Twitter, but also go find our company at INE. And again, INE is a training provider. You can also find eLearn Security, which is an INE company, and they are strictly a certification body. So once you do the training on INE, you want to go test out those skills in a practical way. And so go follow us at eLearn Security. In addition to that, I'd be remiss. I am the director of community, so I want to let you know where we will be in the community. As I mentioned earlier, we do these things like, we're on the social networks and we do webinars, we do talks, we do all kinds of different stuff, but we also not only attend, but sponsor a huge number of events every single year. And this year will be no different, albeit again, kind of like last year, most of them will be virtual. Fingers crossed, hopefully by the end of the year, maybe even the summer for DEF CON, we'll be able to physically go there. We'll see. Everybody, please be safe out there. I don't want to encourage anyone to do anything they'd be uncomfortable doing or put anybody in a harmful situation. But with that, go check us out. We really are starting to ramp up our event schedule in March. So in March, we'll be at NullCon. We'll be doing some other things like B-Side San Francisco and NahamCon. Moving throughout the rest of the year, we're going to be at a lot of big events like RSA, the Diana Initiative, DEF CON. This is just a small smattering of events. IoT Village alone, which we sponsor, we will be in attendance to every single one of their events as well. And it's between 15 and 20 events this year alone. Again, keep in mind, because of the situation we're going through now, a lot of this information may change, but there you have it. So we look forward to seeing you. And then, of course, as mentioned earlier, by not just registering, but also attending this webinar, you've automatically been entered into a drawing for some great prizes. The top prize is a full year of our premium subscription worth $750. That comes with access to everything INE offers, as well as unlimited cybersecurity labs, boot camps, discounts on certification exams, and much more. Now, the second winner is going to get a $400 voucher for your choice of an eLearn Security certification exam. And the third place winner gets a $200 eLearn Security exam voucher, which will be good for the EJPT, or the Junior Penetration Tester Practical Certification Exam. Now, be sure to attend the webinar on Friday as well to earn an extra chance of winning, but also attend that because we will be announcing the winners live at the end of Friday's live webinar, which will be with Philip Wiley, as we mentioned earlier. So he's a fantastic individual, not only a great human, but a very experienced security professional. And he's going to talk a lot about how to get into this as a profession. And as you may or may not know, Philip Wiley quite literally wrote the book on it. So go look up the Pen Tester Blueprint. He's a co-author of that. We're going to be covering a lot of that material, as well as other career questions that you may have. All right. So how are we doing on time? We definitely have some more time for questions. So let's move on to that. All right. So I don't know, Emma, if you want to find some questions that you find interesting. I'm going to also open this up and see what we can do by just going through the questions one by one. All right. So I was taking the Burp Suite Basics Lab last night, but couldn't reach the vulnerable web app. You know what? I don't want to give support here for Burp Suite, but keep in mind that Burp Suite is made by a company called Portswigger. Portswigger does have a huge amount of fantastic free resources for you to go play and learn Burp Suite. So I would probably recommend that you go talk to them. Would it be good if we have hacking VMs open? I'm just going to take that as a general question. So short answer is yes. It's always fantastic to play and practice in a sandbox kind of environment, something that is safe and not a production environment. So doing that through VMs is a great way to go. In addition to that, there are plenty of VMs out there, or virtual machines for those who aren't used to it. There are both virtual machines that do the attacking, as well as virtual machines that are being attacked. So some of the really good ones to try out are, like Metasploitable is a very good one to try. Also, if you want to learn web app pen testing, OWASP is a great organization, and they have some fantastic resources that will teach you as well. And they have their OWASP top 10. So those are things that you definitely want to consider. But they also have a vulnerable web app called Juice Shop. The other cool thing is that they have a way to download all of that, so that way you can do it all on your own and also turn it into a mini CTF if you want to practice not just alone, but maybe with your friends or a group or whatever. So that's really cool. A lot of those VMs are fantastic. You can also get other VMs in other places like Hack the Box and whatever. Those outside of VMs that are great places to practice are TryHackMe. We partner and do a lot of work with TryHackMe. We think they're fantastic. So of all of the ones that I would recommend, that is a great place to go practice, TryHackMe is top on my list. Now, as far as places to, those are VMs and other places where you can practice your skills, but there are also VMs that work as attack platforms. So everything from Kali to Parrot, or even to roll your own version of Linux, you can do that all in a virtual environment. So I would highly recommend trying them all, see which one works best for you. But the cool thing about getting something like either Kali or Parrot is that all of the tools are already pre-installed and Linux is all set up for you. So there's really not much you have to do. So the barrier to entry to start learning this stuff is very low. And so you can get going right away. And in fact, that's exactly the types of environments that we recommend when doing any of our training through INE to prepare for eLearn security certifications. All right, I hope that answered it. If not, please ask another question later. Are there any IoT hacking certifications that INE will be making in the future? So we do have this in discussions, but it is not on any roadmap right now. So there are definitely no imminent releases that are coming, but it is something that is very popular in the industry. Also keep in mind this, even though we don't specifically have any IoT certifications or training, is that IoT devices are kind of like a mashup of all kinds of different technologies. So clearly they can connect to the physical network or even a Wi-Fi network in a number of different ways. And so your normal network pen testing courses will definitely teach you how to find those devices on your network and also pen test them. Because a lot of IoT devices actually run a mini version of Linux. Some of them even have a mini version of Windows, or even their own separate operating system that may be proprietary. But these are all things that you can pen test using exactly the same tools, techniques, and methodology of network pen testing. Now, once you get on there, a lot of them have a web interface that you can not only interact with the device, but it also does some kind of service for whatever it is that this device is meant to do. Well, because it's a web app, well, there you go. That falls into the category of web app pen testing. So there's that. We also have reverse engineering courses. There's a lot of things that go along with that. So if you, again, keep in mind that IoT devices are mashups of a bunch of different technology in a very small compartment. A lot of the training that we do can directly be associated with hacking IoT devices. The one thing we do not do, and maybe that's beyond the scope of what we can do remotely, but we do not offer any hardware hacking training or certifications. But again, with everything going virtual these days, it wouldn't shock me if that was somewhere on our roadmap, but future, maybe a year or two down the line. All right. How practical would it be for a network engineer to get into hacking? Honestly, very practical. In fact, I had this discussion with someone just a few days ago that there's a number of different buckets where people normally come from in order to get into hacking, ethical hacking, pen testing, whatever discipline you want to talk about. And so mainly those three buckets are networking. So that can include network engineering or network admin, sysadmin. So that's, running Linux environments, Windows environments, basically handling the system administration duties for your organization. And then the third bucket is dev. I've always used those three buckets, but it just kind of occurred to me as we were discussing people, especially like Philip Wiley, who came into cybersecurity from a very different field, that there's actually a fourth bucket. And it's those people who have no experience whatsoever and are making a pivot. So a lot of the training that we do isn't just for, let's say, high school or college students who are looking to add to their technical skills, or those who are already in the industry but want to advance their skills and become experts. Well, we offer all of that stuff. But It's also those people who have no experience whatsoever, and they're joining this industry for the first time, not only because it's cool as hell and people think it's a very sexy thing to do, but because of the demand for the jobs and the pay that you can get. So without a doubt, the basics of pen testing start with networking. So you are in a fantastic, very practical place to get into hacking or pen testing. Then what I would recommend for you, really go try that free starter pass that INE has. Go through not only the pen testing student course, but also a little bit of the snippets of some of the other stuff. Go try out very inexpensively our other monthly plans so you can get access to everything that INE does. So that way, without having to spend the $750 to have full access to the virtual labs that give you hands-on, well, let's say you're just not ready for that, or you're not even sure if that's going to be an interest or something you want to do for a living. You get a free toe in the water. You get a very inexpensive monthly option to further, let's say, put a foot in the water, and then you decide what your path is. You decide, is it the offensive side? Is it the defending side? Because to be honest with you, here's a question that we often get, and I'm sure I'll get it in here somewhere, is that a lot of people look at this and say, hey, I want to do the offensive side because it's really cool. But truth be told, probably 90 to 95% of the jobs that are out there, they're on the defending side or the blue side. Also, if you're looking to advance your career into management, maybe even get to that C-level spot, most of those people come from either a business end or they come from the defending end of the organization. So I don't know. I hope that helps. So let's do this. We are a few minutes past the hour. I'm more than willing to stay and answer some more of your questions. So don't go anywhere. I'm just going to wrap up this presentation, put a little bow on it, so that way we can stop the recording and make it about an hour when we put it up on the website and on YouTube. So with that, I just want to thank you for joining us. Cybersecurity Week has been such a fantastic event that has taken a number of people. In fact, the entire INE family is really helping us put this together. And I think it's a fantastic way, again, for you guys to get a little idea of what the industry holds, and also some tools and techniques to actually try it out for yourself. But then, of course, give you an avenue to really try this out as a career. So with that, I thank you for joining us. Don't forget to go join up the rest of the events that we have going on for the rest of the week. Be sure to join us Friday live, not only for a free entry into the prizes, but also to see who won. You may just win. You don't have to be present to win, but you do have to attend at least one of the 3 webinars we're doing this week in order to earn that quote unquote virtual raffle ticket. But if you are chosen, you don't have to be present to win. All right, well, until then, again, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to everything else we're going to be doing, not only the rest of this week, seeing you at events the rest of this year, but also encouraging you to advance your security careers. And then when you become an expert, how you're either going to join INE, give back to the community, or tell us about your story. Those are things that we love to do. We live for that. We love changing people's lives. So again, thank you. With that, we will see you tomorrow and throughout the rest of the year. Happy hacking.